Beekeeping taught me more in one season than I ever expected. The wins, the mistakes, and everything in between. Thanks to Jonathan from the Hive Doctor for letting me host tonight's school meeting and share my first year experience. I did run into a few technical glitches, so I wasn't able to record the full live discussion, but I do have my full talk right here. Let's get into it. All right, so first of all, I want to thank Jonathan. He's not here, but I want to thank him for entrusting the platform to me to share my first year beekeeping. Though I have only kept bees for, not even a full year yet, I feel like they definitely taught me a lot of lessons that YouTube and books don't teach you. You learn it when you are working the bees and they are doing what they want to do, and they're telling you they're doing things that they didn't read the books, they didn't watch the YouTube videos, they do what they want to do. That's when I learned the most about bees. So I guess we all have our why bees time in our life. And I guess for me, if you knew me as a kid, it's probably no surprise that I have bees because I've always loved animals, creatures, nature. So it just feels very natural and slightly magical when I'm with the bees. But if we go back to 2023, I feel like that's kind of a moment in time where my beekeeping journey sort of began, because it was actually when I got chickens. I have a friend who has chickens, and we were talking one day, and I don't even know how it came up, but she asked if I wanted some fertilized eggs and wanted to borrow her incubator. I had been talking about getting chickens for years, and I said, yeah, that sounds fun. So I started my flock and my backyard homesteading journey. So then in 2024, I kind of had in my mind, well, what next? What am I going to add? We don't have acreage, but we have about a half an acre. It's fully fenced in, but we're not in a neighborhood, but we're not in the country. We're kind of somewhere in between. We have neighbors, but they're not super close. So we do have room to do some homesteading things. And I have a friend on Facebook who has bees, and I thought, well, that's kind of cool. I like the idea of that. So I started doing research like I always do when I'm going to do my next project. Whenever I tell my husband I was thinking or I have an idea, he says, uh oh, because I have something coming. But so I started doing some research, and I found out about horizontal hives and thought, well, I'm short, I'm small. That sounds perfect to keep bees in. So I built a horizontal hive and decided I was going to try to catch a swarm. Looking back, I have to laugh because it was really ridiculous. I mean, the luck it would take to catch a swarm the way that I was trying to catch a swarm at that time, uh, the odds are probably greater to win the lottery. But it started my journey. We all have to start somewhere, so it is what it is. I didn't catch a swarm that year, and then it got to the point in 2024 where it was too late to order bees. So I just decided 2024 was not going to be the year of bees, but I was going to learn everything that I could about bees, and bees were going to come in 2025. I kept telling people, my husband doesn't know it yet, but next year we're getting bees. And then I kind of just threw a little hint here and there, and he actually was totally okay with it, which I didn't have to beg. So I actually my main where I've really started learning about bees, and I found some really good foundational knowledge of bees. I found out that the University of Arkansas offers a free beekeeping course. It's taught by Dr. John Zawislak, and his videos are on YouTube. They have free printables, or you can download uh, all the information that they have. And it was a really good course just to have some basic knowledge of bees and beekeeping. And then, of course, I found all the YouTube videos to learn from. I didn't actually find the Hive Doctor until later in my journey, but found a lot of good resources on YouTube and just did a lot of learning fall of 2024 and then winter into 2025. So then my 40th birthday gift from my husband was my package of bees. And thankfully, I realized that you have to place your order pretty early in the year. So I got that order placed. I found a place that was pretty local. It was a couple that was about 30 minutes away. They drive down to South Georgia and pick up I think it was a horse trailer or something, and they fill it full of packages and bring them up here. So it was nice that I was able to pick them up pretty locally. And I decided that I was going to video my beekeeping journey, and I have documented all but one hive inspection and all of my beekeeping journey. And that is something that I found to be extremely helpful, especially as a new beekeeper, because I was able to go back and review my footage from my inspections. And there were times that I caught things on the video, the playback, that I didn't see in person. Because sometimes when the bees are going crazy, and especially when you're new to beekeeping and you're learning to stay calm when you're surrounded by hundreds of bees flying around you, sometimes you miss things. So one of my biggest tips that I would give to new beekeepers, any beekeeper, but especially new, is you can video your inspections and post them to YouTube privately if you don't want to share them publicly. So I think that's a really good tool that can be used as a beekeeper. And you can also take screenshots if you're wanting pictures and stuff, and zoom in on frames and stuff like that. So I found that to be really helpful. But so it was, I think, my 6.5 week hive inspection. I had been inspecting my hive every week, which another thing that I recommend to especially a new beekeeper is to get into your hives once a week. I know that it disturbs the bees, but I think it's really helpful because, like I said, getting into the hives, hands-on learning is there's just nothing beats that. But we'd had a lot of rain, so I hadn't been in there as often as I had been getting in there. And I start going through the frames and I see queen cells, and at least one of them was capped. So I finished the inspection just looking at what I had. My queen was still in there, my original package queen, but there were capped queen cells. And I closed it up. And let me back up. I had also had my second deep ready to put on there. And I guess I had just waited just a little too long, which goes to my point of timing is so important and crucial in beekeeping, which I realized and learned through the year. But they apparently had already decided they were cramped and started making queen cells. And so I closed up the hive and did some research, talked to a couple beekeeping friends, and found out that when you have a capped queen cell, they really could swarm on you any given moment. So the following day, I got back in there and with the intention of finding my queen and performing a walkaway split. Instead of adding the box on top, I was just going to put that to the side. I had thrown together a bottom board and a lid. So I had found my queen every time, had no problem finding her. And the one time that I needed to find my queen, had to have my queen, I got through all 10 frames and I couldn't find her. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I took a step back, took a deep breath, said a little prayer, went back through, and thankfully I found her. So I moved the frame with my queen, some nurse bees, some brood, and then a resource frame over to my new box. And it worked. They didn't try to swarm or continue raising, or they didn't, the split did fine. They stayed, didn't try to leave. And then I let the original hive continue raising a new queen. And I did learn patience is a virtue because I kept checking, trying to find eggs from my new queen. And I just needed to probably wait a little bit longer. If you ever watch David Burns, he always says, wait 10 days. So I should have waited 10 days and that probably would have fixed the problem. But I did eventually find eggs in there. So I had a newly mated queen. She was laying. It was all good. So then about mid-June, I'm inspecting my hives and I found queen cells in my split. And I thought, well, the bees know how to be bees better than I do. So maybe I should just let nature take its course at this point. And I just let them be, pun intended. And then I think it was July 3rd, I got in there and I was going through the frames again. I get to a frame, I see the queen, everything looks good, good brood pattern. I go to the next frame, looks good. And I get to another frame and I see a queen. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just saw a queen 2 frames ago. So I go back to that frame. I have both of the frames, I have 2 queens. Now, from what I've heard, it's not unheard of for a mother-daughter to potentially coexist in a hive, but it's definitely not common. So at this point, I have 2 mated queens, and I couldn't let them just fight it out potentially. I may have just timed it perfectly and they hadn't come across each other yet. I don't know. Only God and the bees know that, but Chester, who are you sparring with? My bees did not read the books. They didn't watch the videos. But oftentimes
that is the case.
that they just do what they want to do, or that they coexist?
That they just don't read the books.
Yes, yes, I can attest to that. Mine definitely didn't read the books. They didn't watch the YouTube videos. They 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 just did what they wanted to do, and I learned to roll with the punches. so so I decided, and I forgot to mention this, but I had built a 5 frame nuke and I had set it up as a swarm trap. I didn't catch a swarm, so I grabbed that and put my package queen in there. Did another walkaway split, and I thought, well, you know what? If they don't build up in time for winter, it's better to have multiple queens laying and building up the population, and then I can just combine them if they don't build up in time for winter. So that's what I did. And I did the same thing I had done with the initial split, but it was summertime at this point. And I noticed I had some bee die off. And I feel like my assumption is that since it was summer and it was hotter, I'm assuming maybe their population wasn't big enough to fan it out enough, maybe. That's my best guess. So I did add another frame of nurse bees and brood just to kind of bulk them up a little, and then they were fine. And then I built more equipment and was able to get them into an actual hive. So that's another issue that I had throughout the year. Is I did build all of my equipment from scratch, and as a result, I felt like there were times where I maybe needed some equipment sooner than I had it ready, and my table saw locked up before I was done building everything. So then I had to coordinate going over to my parents' house to use my dad's equipment. So I would highly recommend if just have your equipment ready before you need it, because like I said, timing is crucial with bees. And if you wait about 5 minutes too late, you're too late and you're going to have to deal with what they deal you. So at this point I have 3 colonies, and I was feeding them because I didn't start out the season with any drawn comb, as I'm sure all beekeepers do. And I feel like that's one of the biggest challenges as a first year beekeeper, is getting drawn out comb. It takes so much nectar for the girls to draw out the comb. And even if you're feeding them, I feel like I could have done a better job with checkerboarding and trying to encourage them to draw out comb, but also they can only do so much. So hopefully I can do a little better with that next year. And I'm going into next year with some drawn comb and a head start on that. But so I had 3 colonies, all is well. I'm still feeding them, trying to get them to draw out more comb. And end of August, 2 of my hives had queen cells. Yet again, had queen cells. And they were in the supersedure and swarm position, so I really didn't know what their intention was. So I didn't want to lose my mated queen, and it was so late in the season, as far as it was getting later in the season as far as a new queen mating, and I didn't want to lose half of my population on 2 hives. So I decided I would pull the queens from the 2 hives that had queen cells and put them in my horizontal hive as just resource hives, and then let the hives raise the new queens. And if they successfully mate, then I would figure out what to do with the extra queens. If not, I'd have some backup queens, and then hopefully not lose half of my colony. Sorry about that. I had a call coming through. But the problem with that was it was robbing season, and I kept trying to feed my resource hives internally, but every time I stuck sugar water in there, the robbers just kept coming. I'm sure it was my bees. I assume it was my bees trying to rob my bees. And so one of the resource colonies ended up absconding, just totally up and left. They were gone one day. And the other one, they stayed, but they were small. They had some loss. So that was a mess. It was a long several days trying to get the robbing to stop. That would be another thing. Do all you can do to prevent robbing before it begins, because once it begins, those robbers are going to come back, because they know where it's at. So that was another hard lesson learned. And maybe don't start resource hives during robbing season. That might be a thing too, because they also weren't strong enough to defend the area. So one of the hives successfully raised a new queen, which is actually one of the queens that I have now in one of my overwintering colonies. And then the other one, I just never saw a queen in there. I never saw signs of a queen. So I marked my backup queen and I reinstalled her. And then a week later I checked and I found an unmarked queen. So apparently they had somehow raised a queen and it seems as though they killed the queen I had installed. But at this point, it was late enough in the season. They just weren't built up enough. They had the brood break from trying to raise a new queen. It was just horrible timing, and I probably could have managed it better, but being a new beekeeper, it was what it was. It happened how it happened. So I ultimately decided to consolidate down to just the 2 hives, remove the newest queen that hadn't proven herself, because the other newly raised queen, from what I saw, she had a good brood pattern, and I was still really happy with my package queen. She just seemed to be doing really well. So I removed the newest queen, and then I dispersed the best frames from that hive to the 2 hives I now have going into winter. So I have my package queen in one hive, and I'm assuming that she was new this year. I don't actually have that information, but I assume she was new this year. And then I have one that was, I think she was around beginning of September-ish, or late beginning of September, so this year. And I did actually, side note, today I actually saw flight from the other hive. I've seen flight from both of the hives within the past couple of days. So I know I'm not out of the woodwork yet, but it's good to see that they're still alive. Although there's nothing I can really do at this point. So with that said, I am now down to 2 hives going into winter. I'm not sure that I feel 100% confident in where they're at going into winter. Like I said, I just kind of always felt one step behind because I was learning the steps as I was going. So then I felt behind when I was acting on the step. I think that's just kind of part of the first year in beekeeping. And, I'm happy with my first year in beekeeping. The bees taught me lots of lessons. Hands-on learning is always the best. And, I'm hoping they both survive. But if they don't, I'm going into season 2 with drawn comb, equipment, and a lot of lessons. So crossing my fingers, saying a little prayer that they survive, or at least one of them, because if one of them survives, I can work with that. And if they don't, I can work with that too, I suppose. But that was my first year in beekeeping in a nutshell, and some lessons that I learned. I also, for me, it's never been about the honey. Of course, I'm excited for when I finally do get honey, but it's always been more of just the connection to nature and feeling like I'm helping the environment, helping nature by keeping healthy hives and sending them out into my area to pollinate and do what they do. And I don't know, for me, it's been at times a little magical, sort of. There was one time that I was walking. I guess it's kind of a blessing and a curse that my hives are literally in my backyard. So I'm a total helicopter mom. I know my neighbors probably think I'm crazy, and maybe they're not entirely wrong, because I either usually have a chicken or I'm watching my bees, or both. So, I'm a little bit of a crazy chicken lady and a crazy bee mom, and just crazy. But I was walking up to my hives one day to just watch the bees fly in, and as I was walking up, this girl just flew up right about here, close to my face, and just hovered. Now, it probably wasn't for as long as it felt, but it really felt like a long time. She just hovered there. She didn't fly around me. She just hovered facing me. And then she flew off and went back to work. And I just kind of I feel like another thing I learned was sometimes we just have to be still and observe and listen to the bees, because they'll tell us what's going on. I had actually heard that when you have a queenless hive, you'll hear it. And there was a moment that they were raising a new queen, but they had a different hum, and they didn't sound mean, but it was just, I guess if you've heard it, but I could hear it. I could hear what they were communicating. And I feel like if we approach them, I know you're always going to you have to be cautious, and there's some colonies that may get mean and nasty, or of course there's Africanized colonies, but I feel like if we approach the bees with good intentions, they communicate with pheromones. So why wouldn't they kind of sense us? If we go in nervous, they're going to sense that. If we go in calm and with good intentions, I feel like they sense that too. I actually, after, I can't remember when I started doing this, but there was a point and for the majority of my active beekeeping season, where I bee kept with shorts and a t-shirt and a veil and no gloves. The only times that I got stung was when I was manipulating hives, like when I was doing the walkaway split. I was almost done and I was pushing them in. I mean, literally almost finished putting everything back together. And I guess my thumb just brushed one of them the wrong way and she stung me. But they didn't go crazy. I smoked my thumb and went on, and they didn't turn on me. I stayed calm, and so I feel like just having a good intentions and good mindset, they sense that, I think. And I also think that we as beekeepers, and I'm sure the more years you have in beekeeping, you may kind of forget what it felt like in the beginning. But I think it's important that we don't forget that magical, that view that we get into the life of bees that so many people don't get, but we get to do that. And I feel like that's such an honor and privilege to be a part of nature in that way. And I love it. I had a great first year. I'm excited for next year and for winter to be over, even though it's not even technically winter yet. But I'm excited to see how they grow and I grow next season. And so that was my first year in beekeeping, and my take on it. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more beekeeping content and backyard homesteading projects. And if you want to be a part of our amazing community, join the clan on Skool. We've got great conversations, support, and learning happening there every week. You'll find the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.